Hey, everyone. Welcome to another episode of the New American Media Podcast. I have my friend here, Dean DeLisle. He is founder of Forward Progress. Excuse me. They are a capital raising company out of Chicago, Illinois, and Dean is a Chicago native and has grown up there his whole life. But like we talk about on this pod, a second generation immigrant, right? His grandparents came over in the early 1900s. And as he was growing up as a child, it really shaped him. Dean, tell us a little bit about yourself and growing up in that atmosphere.
Yeah, for sure. So my dad was Hungarian Romanian, and my mom was British. So I'm half Brit and half Hungarian Romanian, and I'm sure there's some other mix in there too. But what was interesting is he would tell me stories about and I would talk to my grandfather about coming over with my grandmother. And so my grandfather was Romanian, my grandmother was Hungarian, and if you know the history there, those countries would battle it out all the time. So they had to sort of sneak around, and then they finally had to just almost elope to the U.S. to start their new world together, right?
So a true Romeo and Juliet story, Montague
Yeah.
Capulets.
Yeah,
Wow.
so it's pretty interesting. And then my grandfather, went into the Marines and fought 3 tours during the war, and just an amazing man, and wound up actually remarrying when he got here. So what happened was my dad then became adopted to another gentleman here in the U.S. And so they sort of separated for a little bit, and I'll bring this back full circle. But so in that grandfather of mine, Harry DeLisle, which is where the name came from, because it's not Hungarian, Romanian, or British.
Right.
He it was an adopted name, but he was an entrepreneur to his soul. I mean, he was he was a retired postal worker, but he had one of the most popular bars in Hammond, Indiana, which is just over the border from Chicago. And he always had companies going. And so when I got a little bit older, he had already gotten rid of the bar, and he moved out to a farming community, and he had a farm. And he wasn't a farmer, although we had a farm with animals, and we had a lot of, we had alfalfa fields, but he would lease out the farm. He was an auctioneer, so he was just a hustler. He would just auction anything off that he could. And then he owned 2 white hen pantries, which are like 7-Elevens in the town of LaPorte, Indiana. And I just remember working summers out there. I'd either work on the farm, I'd work in the stores. So I learned retail, I learned farming and chopping wood, and taking care of animals and chasing goats and all that fun stuff, all at the same time. And my dad was always doing the next thing, right? So he always had some side hustle going on. So he grew up as an encyclopedia salesman, door knocking, door to door, and then he sold shoes back in the day to guys, because everybody was working in the mills back then. So he'd go selling, had a business selling these shoes that they would wear in the plant, and with the steel-toed shoes, and he would be selling those to everybody. And then he wound up. My mom was originally from England. They wound up separating, and we lived in England for about 3 years. And
wow!
And then
how old were you when you lived in England?
First grade to third grade. So then this is sort of full circle. My mom was just young. She wasn't ready, to have us 2 kids. So then she wanted to ship me to New Zealand with one sister, and wanted to ship my sister to another sister in Australia. So separate the kids, leave my dad. My dad's like, we're not doing that. he grabbed us, and in the middle of the night, he like shipped us back to the U.S. It was total military. He was special forces. So he's like, I'm going to do an extraction with my kids here. So he brings us to the U.S. and this is his service flag behind me. So I keep that as a memory of him just, doing whatever it takes, for the kids and the family. So then when we wind up coming back, he's got no place to live because this is like literally we jumped on a plane and we're in Chicago. And so he calls my Uncle Mike. And then, my Uncle Mike couldn't take us because he had too many kids in their household. And he calls his original father, who happened to have 3 kids of his own. And they took us in. And so the kids moved bedrooms and they, my sister, my dad, and myself, we all wedged ourselves into, another bedroom. And it was just crazy. And this was in, south side of Illinois, Chicago. And so, so anyway, it was just this entrepreneurial spirit, and he was always hustling and doing something. And then he met my mom. She was my stepmom. She was a school teacher. So we quickly moved back over the border to Indiana. And I'll never forget this. He was always, like, he started going to, he was always selling something. So back in the day, have you ever heard of Shaklee food supplements?
No, I haven't.
They've been around since the 70s, but there's all kinds of MLMs, network marketing. Well, him and my mom started up this business where they were like the top producers. And so we lived in this, lower middle class neighborhood as they were trying to get their stuff going together. He's going to night school. He wanted to leave. He was working in a manufacturing facility, wanted to go and become a teacher because she was a teacher. And then he wanted to become a shop teacher. So he went back to Purdue to finish that degree. But at the same time, this man is one of the top producers in the country for this MLM. So you could imagine we're living in this lower middle class neighborhood. And back then you had to inventory your product. So our garage was filled with boxes.
With supplements.
Couldn't get our bedrooms were filled with supplements. And my dad was just a hustler. We would have these networking events in our house, and they would bring people in, and it was just crazy. So, that started for me way back then of just holding events and talking in front of people. And we were just part of that. My mom was one of the union leaders for this teachers union. So my whole thing growing up was her trying to pitch and lobby for all these teachers. Yeah. So she could be on that side of the fence. So I grew up in this environment of just whatever it took. And so anyway, it was funny because they were so good at Shaklee. They would always win new cars. They were always going on trips, and we always have shipments coming in and out. And I was in a tough neighborhood, and everybody's just like, wow, DeLisle, are your parents drug dealers, man? Are you guys drug dealers? Because, man, you got a lot of stuff going on. You got nice cars. And here we are. The car's probably worth more than the house at the time.
Yeah. Wow. That's amazing. And then you have all these quote unquote supplements in your garage.
Yeah, I take them to this day. I take them to this day, man. I still take them. It's like sort of like a metaphor of just, how I got here type thing. Right. So how it all happened. And so anyway, so as a kid, I mean, this is even while, think about it, I'm in fourth, fifth grade. We're doing like, I'm scrambling with my buddies. We're doing these carnivals for the neighborhood, and we're just setting stuff up in people's garages. We're selling stuff. We're hustling. We would set up games and movies. And this is back when they had 8mm movies. So we would go on someone's porch. We would charge tickets. And just that entrepreneurial spirit of like just knowing how to generate money whenever you needed money, And there was a country club at the end of the block, and I'd go down there, and at night I'd hop the fence and collect all the golf balls, and then stand in front of the country club and sell them to the guys coming in to golf.
Wow! See, that's a true hustle. I love that. I love that.
Yeah. So
that's what builds that mental fortitude going forward.
Yeah. And so, just fast forward, I just always had companies as young as I can remember. And then in Chicago, I got to the point where, when you lived in Northwest Indiana, which is like a suburb of Gary, Indiana, so rough parts, but, you could see the city. So that was your goal, was to get to the big city, right?
Yeah. You could see it right over the river. I mean, the lake.
Yeah. So really, I'm literally working as a busboy in this restaurant. And there was always side jobs to be had. Like I was like 14 or 15, didn't have a driver's license, and I want to take this girl to the church carnival. And this guy had a limo company, and he's like, well, if you wash limos, come in on Saturday and Sunday and wash limos, I'll give you a limo on a Tuesday or Wednesday for $100 for the night, and that'll cover everything. I go, really? So anyway, I do that. And this limo pulls up, and my dad's like in this neighborhood, right? And my dad's like, what's going on? He goes, oh, I'm taking Jill, on a date in this limo to the church carnival. So
wow, that is amazing.
Yeah, and
I bet your dad was proud of you that day.
Oh yeah, and then cutting lawns and whatever it took, and then yeah, so there was always some gig. I even did the thing where the same guy with the limo company always had side hustles. It was a business restaurant. It was a steakhouse. So business guys, I was just influenced by all those guys coming in. And I would do the thing where you dress up as the Easter Bunny and go to rich families' houses and play with their kids, and you make $200, cash, dress up as Santa Claus, whatever, So yeah, it was always some sort of side hustle. So when I got to Chicago, I met this guy in the restaurant. He was the CEO of Merrill Lynch. So I was doing a side hustle and catering his parties for all these guys coming in from Chicago, and they had limousines, and I knew you could tell they had money,
Right.
And I was like, wow, financial markets, the real estate guys it was just like, sort of like the events we go to now, right? Same type of guys. So
exactly.
So anyway, one night I'm hanging with him. It's like 3 a.m. We're pretty much partied up pretty good. And I just look at him and I'm like, hey, Mr. Bradley, what would it take for me to work with you guys on all those computers down in Chicago at the Board of Trade at Merrill Lynch? He goes, Dean, I like you. You can start in 2 weeks. And I'm in the middle of college going for hotel restaurant management because I thought that I was going to be a restaurant owner, right?
Yeah.
And so anyway, lo and behold, next thing you know, I'm put in the Board of Trade, and I am put on the team that actually took Merrill Lynch from punch cards and cards on the trading floor to the first internet where we transmitted trades all over the world.
Wow. On the Chicago market.
At the age of 20, I was part of that crew that built those systems. I mean, they had books that were this thick that we had to read. They sent me to school to IBM Plaza, and I had to learn how to make the lights go on, how to program it, how to make stuff happen. And that's all we did. Go to classes, come back and test stuff out. It was like, the first ship to the moon type thing, right? So it was at the very beginning. So it was very entrepreneurial, even though it was corporate, right? Because we were a startup of, the original internet back then, right? So then that worked for about 3 years. Long story short, I put this in my book, by the way, which those of you don't know, this is on Amazon. So you just type in my name on Amazon.
Plug in the book.
I put this story in there. And the reason I did is because I want to inspire people that it's like, if you just ask, a lot of times people in your network will help you get to these places. So anyway, after 3 years, long story short, I put it in the book, he gets nailed. The CEO gets nailed for embezzling. And so then everybody winds up just slowly, whoever he brought in slowly got eliminated. So I learned real quick about corporate backstabbing, right? So
my God.
I know.
And this was at Merrill Lynch.
Yes. And then for no reason, I get cut. I get set up and cut and fired. And I'm like, oh my God, for the first time, I had to figure out what unemployment was. And I just didn't like it. So then I'm like, screw it. So I'm going to school to become a systems programmer. And there's job boards, right? And so I just go to this job board and I pull this card off that says data entry position. And I was making like $30 an hour at Merrill Lynch. And it was like $9 an hour. And I'm like, oh man. So I go, I'm going to take it. Just whatever happens, it could lead to an opportunity because I'm working on a computer somewhere, right? I'm doing data entry. So I go there and I meet with the president and I go, she goes, you're too highly qualified for this job. You're overqualified. And I go, well, that's BS. I go, I'll knock this job out for you. She told me what the objective was to get all these orders plugged into the computer. I go, I'll knock that out in 2 hours, not 8 hours. And plus I'm going to night school. And I said, but what you have to let me do is you have to let me write programming. You have to let me program and write code for free, but then you're going to be a reference for me. You won't
Oh,
have to pay me to
wow.
write the code. And so she
Yeah.
goes, deal. So then I met this lady who was like she was like their consultant that would come in, and her husband was one of the top engineers at IBM at the time. And so he comes in and says, hey, there's a gig for a COBOL programmer at Midland Ross Corporation. And it's starting at $40 an hour or something like that. And it's 40 hours a week or how many hours he wants to put in. So that sort of bridged me to that job. And then I started my first official LLC company. And that was my first client starting my first computer company.
Wow, that's amazing.
I went from a data entry gig and I networked my way into my first client. Next thing you know, money, I jumped from $40 an hour. I take on some more clients. Within a year and a half, I'm at $140 an hour.
That is great. See, and this is the persistence and perseverance.
Yes.
After losing that $30 an hour job at Merrill Lynch in the financial sector, you didn't hang your head. Like a lot of people would have gotten on unemployment, went back. You found a job immediately, even though it was paying a third of what you were making, and were able to climb your way back up. Now, that in and of itself is what the American spirit, the entrepreneurship spirit is all about. So I'm loving this. So tell us more, please.
Yeah, I could go on forever, but I know we have other things coming up. But so then, but you know what? Here's what's interesting. And so I run into all kinds of good people on these accounts that I'm in because I'm like the computer guy, right? And these were big companies because back then there was no PCs or anything. You had to buy like a mainframe to do anything. We didn't have laptops. We didn't have cell phones, right? It was sort of that digital age. And so I would go into these companies, but then I ran into an accounting firm and I was like, man, what I really don't know, because I didn't study very well in accounting, is I really don't know much about P&Ls, balance sheets, accounting. So then I wound up, selling that company, and I went into a CPA firm as head of their MAS department, which was brand new. Accounting firms didn't do technology, but because tech was so new, PCs started to come out, Lotus 123 back in the day. They had software packages, ACPAC software. So I'm like, I'm going to be the top ACPAC software, which is accounting software, installer in the US. It was by Computer Associates. And lo and behold, man, I just sat in a conference room and I watched VHS tapes, learning Lotus 123 and writing spreadsheets that were automated. And then the accounting software came out with little floppy disks and stuff like that. And so anyway, I learned accounting because I had to go into manufacturing companies and different types of construction companies, and anybody that could afford a computer needed accounting software, whether it was accounts receivable, accounts payable, order entry, inventory. So I had to learn all that stuff. And I learned it by learning about the business and installing it. So then I gained all this knowledge about all these industries. And after about 3 years, I'm just like, I don't want to be a CPA. I don't want to take a CPA. I don't want to do this. So I said, I'm going to leave and I'll give you guys, and all their clients wanted to go with me because I was pretty valuable at the time. So I cut them a deal to cut them back a percentage of what I earned on their accounts. And then I just started my next computer company. So if you look at my LinkedIn, you'll see this pattern of companies that I hadn't started. But I think one of the biggest lessons is that early on, I felt like when I started those companies, I had to have another partner, and I wasn't as selective about partners. So I learned really quick about really bad partners, people that just didn't have the work ethic I did and didn't want to work as hard as I did. And there was some, I had my first hostile takeover at the age of 27,
Wow.
company, because the partners weren't doing their job. And I just worked out a deal where I was able to acquire all the assets and just flip everything to to my name, and then I wrote them all checks, and I said, okay, this is the first day of the rest of your life and the rest of my life. Do what you want with this money. And I said, this is my company. And then, I took it over from there. So just, it was interesting about my poor selection of partners, because I thought I absolutely needed them to make things work, maybe because of my own gaps and insecurities. And had I had a good partner, maybe I wouldn't have discovered that. But I can spot bad partners a mile away,
Oh, wow. I
Yeah.
mean, that's the thing, right? We learn from all of our mistakes, and you
Right.
did so at an early age, which is great and amazing.
Yeah. Yeah. And so since then, I've had some very successful exits in companies and businesses. And right now I'm part of 7 different companies, and it looks like 8 as of yesterday. So,
Wow.
yeah.
So last we spoke, I think you were at 6 or 7. You've started another one.
Well,
Talk to us a little bit.
Yeah, not necessarily started. Well, yeah, I guess I did start one of those last 2. Sometimes it's just buying into one and helping it go to the next level. It's a good partnership, right? So I may buy in or take equity or shares to help them do what I know I can do for them.
Tell us a little bit kind of how you got to where you're at now today and what you're into with these 7 companies. I know we are currently working with you in at least 2 of those 7 companies,
Yeah.
if not more in the future,
Yeah, interest. Yeah, so I learned just because of my dad, being that door-to-door salesman. We're always in sales and as entrepreneurs, right?
Yes.
So it's in my blood. So my dad's just like, you want to make more money, sell something with more zeros.
Very true. Very true.
So that's how I got into real estate, which I have a development and a brokerage. I have about 4 developments going on right now doing luxury RV parks. I have Forward Progress, which has been around now 23 years. I do have a very good partner in that one. We raise about
awesome.
Yeah, we raise about 50 to 70 million a year in retail capital. That means capital from accredited investors, 401ks, IRAs. In fact, the stock market just took a dump today because a jobs report just came out and the interest rates didn't drop. So now all of a sudden everybody's freaking out and selling off and stashing cash. It's what people do in these kind of markets. But what's interesting, now they're going to invest in private deals and private companies.
Exactly.
This is where we thrive.
Well, this is what I've said for the longest time. The S&P's been returning like 18 to 22% for the past 3 years. And the mean, I think, has been between 7 and 11, right? Yeah. So we're going to come down, and I think you're going to see that contraction with the AI bubble bursting and some of the other things that are going to happen, and the sector rotations, which you're already seeing with the Mag 7 being down and all of that. But let's talk about kind of these companies. I know we've spoken about S2A Modular as well. I love that company. I think if we could get, housing is one of the largest problems and profit centers in the United States, anywhere in the world, right? People need a place to live. And you and your team and the team at S2A Modular is trying to fix that. Talk a little bit about that and where you guys are going.
Yeah, so I came in because I had a history of raising capital for companies, right? And helping to build and scale companies. That's 2 of my job descriptions, and generating a pipeline for business, right? So when I came in, a chief revenue officer, it was about raising capital. So I helped put together a team. We all raised 75 million to build the first factory and to start the next 2. And now we're looking to pop up factories all over the US and now internationally, and hopefully IPO in the next couple years. And now we have a $450 million round going on in the investment bank that I just my partner and I are investing in. Regiment Securities, an amazing group out of Chicago.
Nice.
We just brought S2A into that bank to now help raise that 450, which will have a combination of retail and and institutional capital in that mix to take it the rest of the way. So what I love about that though is on my developments, I'm also using S2A products. So I'm doing I do luxury RV resorts. So I'm doing luxury cabins and we're building hotels. We can do anything up to 5 stories. I have a gas station I have to talk to you about. It's more of a truck stop, RV wash type, big plaza.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so I have to do 3 or 4 of those. And then medical office building, urgent care. So all kinds of cool stuff. But S2A is part of that because they can build fast and they can build at a reasonable timing and competitive cost. And my job is to rent things out, right? So I want to rent out those cabins. I want rental properties. I want that clubhouse up. I need to get the hotel up so I can start collecting, those fees. And this allows, this allows us to do that faster with S2A modular. So it's sort of nice. My worlds are all working together. So, if I'm over here and I need capital or I need debt, I just go to this side or this side. If I'm in this development, I can factor in S2A modular and I'm part of that. And then I'm part of this development. And, it just brings everything full circle. And now that I have the investment bank, we'll be able to bridge the institutional and the retail capital together.
What would you say, you've worked in raising retail capital for so long? What is the starkest difference now with Regiment Securities and going to institutional capital you're seeing in the difference between retail capital on one hand and institutional on the other?
Would you want me to tell you a secret that a lot of people don't know?
Yes, please.
This is an exclusive, okay?
Exclusive.
Yeah. So sorry, WSJ, you didn't get it first. So the all the institutions that we all know and have done business with, even our family offices, they're coming to us for retail because what's happened is they've all used their network of high net worth and big money for so long. It's starting to stretch out. There's more mutual funds than Taco Bells out there. It's like crazy.
100%.
So
it's look at BlackRock, State Street, Vanguard, everyone, right?
Hedge funds, mutual funds, you name it, so that's one of those things, ETFs, ETN, the whole thing. It's like there's so much at that level that the retail investor is like, well, maybe I'll be entrepreneurial. I'll invest in private companies, right? And so what we do is we work really hard at telling that story and then knowing how to align that story with what people's natural interests are as human beings. If they love cars, we'll get them down that path. If they like energy or sustainability, we'll take them down an S2A path. Or if they always want to be part of manufacturing and construction, we'll take them down the S2A path. So, it can check a lot of boxes and we can profile all the investors and all the people out there and look and see what's happening. And when we have a market, thing that's going on like right now, a sell-off, that means they're sitting on cash and they're probably looking to stuff it somewhere. So they're going to put it into a CD or bonds are down and, for all the government bonds are down. So they're not going to throw it in bonds. So they're probably going to look for private investments and then they're going to get their self-directed IRAs and start taking that out of the stock market and pushing it towards private investment. So, and that works well with the institutions because now the institutions want to come down because they're stretched at the top and they want to create that GP anchor with their normal guys, but then they want to take the rest of the raise and go to the public market. And that helps build their brand and get their projects, not just generate, raising capital, but generating revenue for those companies.
Exactly. What have you seen in terms of structuring these deals when you're going to that institutional capital compared to obviously retail capital, right? Are they asking for more promote or are they asking for a higher split, higher pref? Like what do you see comparatively? Like if you're getting a family office or someone that's institutional, are they saying, I personally want a higher class share than your retail customer? and I want a higher prep. Instead of 6 or 8, I want 10 or 12 or something like that.
Well, and it all depends on what you're selling. So we see everything. We see, technology companies, med tech, prop tech, doesn't matter. We see natural assets like real estate out there and those types of funds. We see energy, oil and gas, you name it. So it really all depends on the sector and the type of investment and the type of company. But we usually don't take any companies unless they're generating revenue in their growth stage and they have a history of some level of success, right?
Right.
So we have a high successful track record, high probability as long as you check all the boxes with us. So for us, it's about telling a good story that we can connect humans on the issuer side to humans on the investment side, and then really, like I said before, what we'll do is take take and carve out a GP slot in there for them on that raise, so we can still get the family offices to play and that money, but we don't have to count on it to fill the entire fund or the entire series of funds. We now can start a retail engine to bring those people in, get them connected, get them part of the cause, and then get them a successful exit on that first cycle, and then open up another one with that same issuer to do another cycle and another cycle. And we can usually get 30 to 40% of the investors, once the machine's running, to just keep putting in. That's what we did during the condo boom. We had like 30 different raises, and they were all condo buildings. They love condo buildings. They exit, they get them another one, get them another one.
Right.
Get them another one. Yeah.
No, I mean, that's amazing. I always say, he who holds the capital makes the decision. And I think you realize this at a very early age. And that's why you've been raising capital now, 20 years, And that, I've realized now, no matter how great of an idea you have or how great of a project, if you don't have the capital, you don't have anything, really.
Right. Well, and you also you don't want just the capital. You want the investors, you want the network, right? You want them all on your side, right? So your cap table are all people. You don't want it not just to be a cap table and bring me more people in the cap table. You have to have investor relations. One of the biggest problems we have are entrepreneurial companies that just have never raised capital, don't know customer service. So that's always a flag for us. If they're not taking care of their customers, they're not going to take care of their investors.
And that's what your investors are your customers,
right?
100%.
And you want them to bring all their friends and family because they run in packs, right?
They do. I mean, that's when we first raised our very first fund. We went that friends and family route. And I joke around. I tell people, I said, when have you ever met a poor Indian person? And that's probably because they just moved to America about 5 years ago. And when you talk to someone, they're going to bring their aunt, uncle, cousin, brother, sister, if they really like your pitch and what you're doing. I talked to a guy and I didn't really think anything of it. He brought me 5 other people and he himself raised an extra $1 million for me, So just things like that. I think you're spot on with that. I do want to ask you, as a final question here, we like to ask all of our guests, what would the older Dean say to a younger Dean today as he was growing up? And then to a second part of that, what would you tell kids today, like kids that are my kids' age, 10, 11, 12, 13 years old, what they should be doing to become an entrepreneur?
Well, don't do drugs.
Yes.
Because I was at Merrill Lynch in the 80s. Don't do drugs.
Oh.
And just when you're making good money, you don't always have to be the guy that picks up all the $1,500 bar tabs. I joke around, but it's not as much. But I used to have season tickets to every Chicago sports team, and I would pick up every sports tab. I was probably spending close to $300,000 a year just on entertaining people, and I sort of got caught up in that stuff. And it was fun. Everybody has good memories for it. But I'll tell you what, when things got tight and the market turned, none of those
people were
none of those
giving you
people were
money
there.
back.
Yeah, none of those people were reciprocating. I was just like, what the heck? I got a business here going down in flames. I write about it in my book, and I'm like, where are all those people? So I think I got caught up too much in maybe being a poor kid that showed people that I had money, instead of building good, solid relationships, so that when things did go bad, Dean, I remember you. You helped me out so much. I'm here for you. What do you need? And so I write about pretty good stories in there, but remember, relationships are about reciprocity, not just what somebody can do for you, but what can you do for each other, right? So help each other out, and you know what, you make that money, that early money, stash 2/3 of it away, man, and just live lean and be smart and get smart people around you that know how to manage that money. That's what I would say.
Nice. No, that's great. Amazing insight. I need an autographed copy of your book, Dean.
Yes, I know. So let's well, it's time to get together soon. So I'll be in
Yes.
I'll be at the next two family office club things, one in Brooklyn and the one in I think it's in
Fort Lauderdale.
Yeah, but they're going to I think they're going to Key Biscayne this year. So
Okay.
but yeah,
Yeah,
remind
no,
me
I'll be there in October in New York City.
Yeah, I will too.
So awesome. I may be coming to Chicago.
I've heard that before.
No, I mean, in a couple of weeks. I'll keep you posted.
Beautiful, man. Well, it's always good to catch up, and then
Yes.
we'll look at your deal this afternoon on our pipeline call and see if we can help you out in some way there. So
Please, and let's stay in touch. Thank you again, Dean, for coming on the New American Media podcast. I greatly appreciate it. Could you tell people where they could buy your book and any other outlets that you want to talk about yourself about?
Well, I'd say just punch my name into Amazon. It's the only one out there, but now I have two more coming out, but one specifically using a lot of the same methodology, but specific to raising capital. So watch out for that one. It'll be out in the spring, most likely. But yeah, if you just connect there, and then if you go to my LinkedIn, connect to me, and you'll see the companies I have going on, and let me know how I can help you.
Awesome. Thank you for taking time out of your busy day and coming on the pod. Greatly appreciate it.
You got it, man.